think a lot of people think architecture is still in the US like a Frank Lloyd Wright. It comes out of the gut and you have this feeling and you kind of draw a line or something. It's just totally ridiculous, right? That it starts with no solutions. It starts with not even knowing what the questions are. One of the things that's unique about this studio is that it doesn't come in with a priori architectural formal ideas. It comes in with asking questions, and I think it departs from the relevancy of those questions to the types of problems that face us today within urban terms.
The idea was to take a city and look at its evolution, and we called it Houston the Genetic City. And the reason was because typically in Europe, when cities were formed, it was along waterways and they began to grow out. And it was a historical way of working with the water and growing in the city. And what happened with Houston was a very typical pattern, that it began on a waterway, and as it evolved, it was this concentric idea, the idea of the city growing out. And what happened in the 1950s is the highway system was developed in America. Houston was one of those cities that was just beginning to evolve, and what happened was that the growth then began to jump along the highway. And so we began to get developments that were further and further from this concentric, typical city evolving. The concept of the exhibit was to look at both this idea of vacancy, the idea of a developer city, where you have spaces in between, and what do you do with this vacancy? The other idea was the unzoned city, and this is something that was really unique in America. There's no planning, people can do what they want, and it's really kind of a frontier town. It's a Wild West. And so that we began to look at Houston as kind of a unique idea of what can you do when you can do anything. And the third aspect was that we are the energy capital of America. It's a petrochemical industrial complex with a large port. And so the idea was, as an energy city, how can you go from this kind of fossil fuel consumption to a kind of sustainable net zero city, and how long would it take?
I see the responsibility of a university as a process of making good citizens, meaning that people are trained in a discipline, but they're also learning to be good stewards of the world and of their environment and their local communities. So the role for us as members of the College of Architecture and Design at the University of Houston is to get our students to think a little bit more broadly about how what they're doing, the design disciplines can engage with the world so that they can become better citizens and they can give things back to the community, the city, the larger environment.
We wanted to bring this project to Berlin because we see a lot of the questions that we are asking within the studio as being a global question to be asked, and that there are a lot of problems that we are dealing with specifically in Houston that can be of benefit to cities like Berlin and others throughout the globe.